Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, and we're back with another episode. And I'm so excited that we have with us today Dr. Heather Paulson. Dr. Heather Paulson is a retired oncologist that is doing some amazing, life changing work from Peru. So let's find out from Dr. Heather what she's up to in Peru. Thank you, Heather, for being with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be sharing this space and time with you.
Yes. So, what is it that you are doing down in Peru right now?
Well, I moved to Peru to open a retreat center where we are introducing people to the healing power of ayahuasca.
And how did you get into that area of work?
Well, so as you had mentioned, I was an oncologist and I was working as a naturopathic oncologist with people who had stage 4 cancer and allowing them to experience the healing of natural medicine alongside their conventional cancer treatments. And I got into this work because I was always looking for ways to help my patients heal from the trauma of their cancer experience. So it is well documented in cancer research that people just being diagnosed with cancer, no matter what stage of cancer it is, experience post-traumatic stress syndrome after that diagnosis and after their treatment resolves. And they're in an active trauma experience during their treatments. So I was always looking for tools to help them resolve that trauma and help recover from PTSD after their treatments were done. And I was reading the book by Michael Pollan called How to Change Your Mind. And he cited a research study on psilocybin or magic mushrooms, specifically for patients who had stage 4 cancer that were terminal. And so they were going to die. They were told by their doctors that they were going to die from their cancer. And they were provided psilocybin mushrooms in a research setting. And this was noted by the participants to be the most profound experience, or in the top 5 most profound experiences of their life, as well as helping them overcome their fear of death and overcome the trauma of their cancer diagnosis. And then some of the participants had a radical remission of their disease, which means that in a medical sense, their cancer spontaneously went away after utilizing one single time psilocybin mushrooms. So that opened my mind up to the power of what we consider psychedelic medicines. And I started doing my research and went down a rabbit hole of all the different psychedelics that are available to create a shift in people's physical and mental health.
And we were talking before, like having grown up in the 80s with all those commercials with like, here's your brain on drugs, like, here's a frying pan. That, as a physician, I remember actually when I first started writing for marijuana for patients, like I got my ability to write for medical marijuana and I didn't do it for years because there's still this like, ooh, I was brought up with like this stuff is bad, this stuff is bad, it's evil. But then really what we're finding out that there's so many medical and healing properties to plant medicine. So how was it dealing with that kind of duality?
Oh my gosh, I struggled with this as well. And I also struggled with prescribing medical marijuana outside of cancer patients experiencing pain that wasn't being touched by pain medicines, and equally addictive pain medicines, opiate-based pain medicines, and also like cachexia and things like that. So I totally resonate with what you're saying, Betsy, because not only did I grow up with that, this is your drug, this is your brain on drugs, and the dare dogs and dare police coming to my school to scare us about drugs. But I also grew up in a family where one of my family members was struggling with a meth addiction. So I was super hesitant to cross into any of even read about some of the psychedelic research until I read the book How to Change Your Mind, and was very cautious and fearful about the addictive nature of these like air quote drugs. And what I have found is, and what I personally experienced with ayahuasca, is that it is so profound in healing emotional states and physical ailments. And the research shows that ayahuasca in its original form is non-addictive in nature. So people do not get addicted to ayahuasca the way that they get addicted to, let's say, methamphetamines or opiates. And when we say opiates, I mean the pharmaceutical version of opiates. So this was really important to me, that it's a non-addictive substance. And then I also got to witness over 1,000 people experiencing ayahuasca for their own healing journey, and saw the amazing, almost miraculous shifts that people would experience in just 3 days of sitting with ayahuasca. So that really helped me release those fears about this particular psychedelic medicine.
And what exactly is ayahuasca?
That's such a good question, because a lot of people don't really know what it is. They might have seen.
And forget it, I can't even spell it.
I know. Well, luckily my spell check corrects it for me. But ayahuasca is a tea. It's a water extract of the vine ayahuasca and the leaf chacruna. So when these two plants are mixed together, it creates a experience where your body can absorb DMT in this water extract, and then you have a brain shifting experience by absorbing that DMT. When these two plants are separate and you do an extract of the plants separately and drink them separately, you do not have a psychedelic experience. So somehow hundreds or thousands, it's been shown even thousands of years ago that people were drinking ayahuasca. This combination was gifted to humanity.
And what is it about this combination of plants that people report these like profound healing or emotional experiences?
It really depends on your worldview point. So I'm going to present a couple of worldview points of how it creates a profound shift. One worldview point is that there's this chemical extract called DMT that affects how our brain, our neurons experience and process information. So it creates new visuals that you might not see in your normal day-to-day life. It opens up stories and experiences. It helps you view past traumas through a different lens. So there's that chemical component that actually shifts parts of our brain, our neurochemistry, and our neurotransmitters, and opens up different brain functions than we have during normal day-to-day brain functioning. So that's one worldview point. So that's very chemistry based and science and like Western science based. The other worldview point is that there's a spirit within the plant and within this plant combination of ayahuasca. So this spirit can enter you and help shift things within your body. And it also works with other plant and animal allies within the spirit realm to shift genetic patterning, to shift the way you see the world, to protect you from certain events, or to teach you techniques and skills when you're in the medicine that you can then use in your out of medicine daily life. So that is another worldview, is that there's this spirit and there's a spirit realm that you're entering while on ayahuasca, and that is where the healing and teaching takes place.
This is just absolutely fascinating, and I cannot wait to come back from the commercial break and ask you some more about this.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
And we're back with Dr. Heather Paulson talking about ayahuasca. One of the things I've heard from people who have experienced ayahuasca is this: after ingesting it, like vomiting or like having this catharsis of like physically, like bowels or vomit coming out. And so that's one thing that kind of scares me. So, what is it about? Like, why does that happen? And you were even talking before that that doesn't necessarily happen to everybody.
So I was mentioning two different world viewpoints. So we're going to also address purging as two different world viewpoints. So from the chemical world viewpoint, ayahuasca, it has a purgative element to it. What a purgative means: anything that you take that makes you vomit, right? So it is a purgative. There is a purgative alkaloid in the tea of ayahuasca. But that's not the only thing that might be happening. When we release, also from a chemical perspective, when we use DMT to shift our brain function and shift our perspective, then we also open ourselves up to other types of healing and unwinding processes. So we know our body can hold trauma, and it's commonly documented in research studies that our trauma, when it's released, can cause shaking in our body. And this shaking is another way for us to purge while in the ayahuasca experience. We also know that people release a lot of chemicals and through tears. And so crying is another way to purge. So vomiting is just one way to purge while on ayahuasca. From these like spirit realm perspectives, the purging is us releasing something that's holding us back, something that's preventing us from seeing ourselves clearly, something that is blocking our highest potential, if you will. And that can be emotional traumas. It can be something that you don't know is holding you back. A lot of times people confront fears while in ayahuasca, and by confronting those fears, they're able to live life more fearless. And if you can live life more fearless, you're living a more free version of yourself. You're not being tied down by fear, perfectionism, expectations. So from a spiritual perspective, you're releasing these things that are blocking you from living your most authentic life.
And now this is something that when someone's doing ayahuasca, you're usually going someplace with someone who's kind of trained. Yeah, could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. I can try. And then if I leave some things out, please ask me some more questions, because the training varies so much. I mean, we have training in North America and in Europe on psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, where psychotherapists and doctors like me are trained in specifically in a more clinical way, walking people through a psychedelic experience. And this training is happening a lot with MDMA, psilocybin, and ketamine in North America. And then in parts of Europe, they are able to use psilocybin, other types of medicinal truffles, and also ayahuasca. So it depends on where you're living in the world, what the training might be for psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. So you're applying what you already know as a counselor or a psychotherapist and guiding people through a psychedelic process. So like that's one end of the training spectrum. And then the other end of this training spectrum is you were born in the Amazon jungle, your family has been doing ayahuasca, serving ayahuasca in Maloka in the jungle for generations. And this is a type of healing and medicine that's been passed on to you. And you've also been passed down certain songs or icaros to help with the healing process. You've probably done at least a year-long dieta where you're in isolation and drinking different plants of the Amazon along with ayahuasca. So that is another end of the training spectrum. And then we have facilitators and shamans that fit in between those two bookends of the spectrum of like very clinical and scientific and Western minded to traditional, familial, generational. I hope that helps answer.
No, that is absolutely,
it's kind of vague though.
no, that's perfect. And it's fascinating too, because I love the fact that you're giving like both views of this, because sometimes I find in being trained in traditional medicine, it's so hard to see outside, like this is medicine, this is what, and look at that spiritual aspect. And I think that's partially why I love talking about body, mind, spirit connection, because I was only trained in the body, and it wasn't through my own journey of getting sick and having things happen that I realized, you know what, if you don't take care of that mental and spiritual aspect of your body too, that's going to lead to illness. So it's really this whole interconnection for total wellness. So
Absolutely.
yeah, what I wanted to ask you with ayahuasca is how long like does it last when someone's going through one of these I don't even know what you call it when someone's administered it.
Yes, when they're dosed ayahuasca. And sometimes it's referred to as a journey, and that's a common vernacular in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. While somebody's journeying, it can be anywhere between, at the minimum, 2.5 hours. It takes about 30 minutes for our body for most people, for our body to break down and absorb ayahuasca. Of course, some people like me are super sensitive to it, and I can feel it within 5 to 10 minutes of drinking. And other people can take up to an hour to start feeling the effects. So it depends on your body mechanisms, your biochemistry, your metabolism. There's a lot of things that go into how long you might feel ayahuasca and then when you might feel ayahuasca. But it's anywhere between 2.5 and then like this week we did a ceremony with a group of people that were just finishing a dieta. And when you're in a dieta, you increase your sensitivity to plant medicines by extracting certain foods from your diet and also drinking other plants from the Amazon. And that increases your sensitivity. So we were all feeling the medicine for 5.5 hours in our post-dieta state. So it can, on average, it's about 4 hours long, 3 to 4 hours.
What exactly does the word dieta translate to? Does it translate into something?
Yeah, in Spanish, dieta just means diet. But it means in this context a very specific way of dieting. So it's not like a diet as we define it in North America, but it means to restrict certain foods. So no salt, no onions, no spices, very bland foods. We were only eating rice, potatoes, quinoa, lentils, a lot of lentils. And so you're restricting your body from sensory inputs. So you restrict your diet, you restrict your sensory inputs from computers, phones, media. You restrict your sensory inputs from people. So we're in isolation as much as possible, so that you're really just diving into yourself. And so a diet means many layers of what you're restricting from your life to increase your sensitivity and create a stronger connection with plants, and most importantly with yourself and your own inner healing.
With your experience in guiding people through this and watching them go through that, what kind of results have you seen in people? What have you heard from the people that have gone through this?
Oh my gosh. So I always caution, like, this is going to sound like a little like snake oily, because it's hard to believe that some of the things I've seen are possible from one plant. But one of the profound healings I got to witness was somebody who had struggled with Lyme's disease for a decade and was using all of the functional medicine things. They were doing the IV therapies, they were cycling antibiotics and antifungals, they were taking all the herbs and nutrients, and they were still in profound level of nerve pain and were really struggling with fatigue. And after 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, their their Lyme symptoms completely resolved. And it's been a year and a half now, and I still am in contact with this person, and their Lyme symptoms continue to be resolved, as documented by their doctor as well. So this is, in chart notes, and even her labs got better after her ayahuasca journeys. So that was really profound. That was one of my first ceremonies, assisting a shaman in ayahuasca. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. like this is amazing, because in functional medicine, it would take years, or as she was already working on it for a decade, and you may or may not get a complete resolution of your disease. I met a man while we were traveling and serving ayahuasca who reversed his cerebral palsy using ayahuasca
Wow.
over a course of about 4 years. Like, you couldn't even tell that he had cerebral palsy, and he used to be in a wheelchair before I met him, and his gait and walking was completely normalized. And that is something that we're told in medical school is non-reversible.
Yeah.
So got to throw that out the window, that concept. And then with emotional healing, it's very common for people to confront sexual traumas and be able to then open themselves back up to relationships and receiving love while they heal from that. And really profound healings in people's lack of purpose, to having, again, a sense of purpose and drive, and like what the meaning of life is. And then some of the most profound healings is when, and this is one of the things that scares people away from ayahuasca, but something that can happen in an ayahuasca journey is to experience your own death. And for a lot of people, that opens them up to more fully embracing life and living life, and embracing and appreciating every single day. So it can be as profound as like healing from cerebral palsy to just having a greater appreciation for every breath that you take.
This is absolutely amazing. And I could talk to you about this for hours, but where can people find more information about you?
Yeah, so my retreat center is called Humpwee House. That's HAMP as in Paul, UY, Humpwee, which in Quechua, which is the language that's spoke here in the Andes Mountains, means to come and to connect with the source, to connect with your center. So Humpwee House we're on Instagram at Humpwee House, and we're on Facebook. We're still building our website. So depending on when you're listening to this, you might be able to find us at humpweehouse.com. And that's the best way to connect with me, is to direct message me on Instagram right now. And I would love to be part of designing a healing experience for you if you're called to ayahuasca.
Thank you so much, Heather, for taking the time to speak with us today. So I just want to remind everybody, go check out those websites, give Dr. Heather's site a follow, share it with people, because this is how, other people heal, is from the information that you're being exposed to. And also, while you're there, don't forget to follow me, and tune in again next week for another episode. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Heather, for being with us.
Thank you.